Good afternoon. I am Joe Marinucci, a member of the Global Cleveland Board of Directors, and I want to welcome you to the International Community Candidate Forum for City Council races, as well as the mayoral race. At Global Cleveland, we are excited to host this non-political, non-endorsement, community-centered conversation. We look forward to this discussion and the positive momentum for Cleveland's future that it will produce. If English is not your first language, please check the Zoom options bar for the interpretation function. If that option is available, we have live interpretation available. If you click on that tab, you should be able to see the option for languages. So thank you for doing that. Before I introduce our moderator and candidate, I would like to thank our partners. The partners include Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Bandando Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, the NCAA of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., Us Together, USCRI Cleveland, Young Latino, and the Young Latino Network. Thank you all. Putting this on would not have been possible without your support. Now, before I explain the guidelines for this forum, we have a short video from Mo Kantner from our national partner, NAE, the New American Economy.
Hello, and welcome to today's Candidate Forum with Global Cleveland. My name is Mo Kantner, and I'm the Director of State and Local Initiatives at New American Economy. At New American Economy, we're a bipartisan research and advocacy organization that focuses on making the economic case for better immigration policies at the federal, state, and local levels. Now, immigration may feel like an abstract issue debated at the national level through very technical, political, and bureaucratic constraints, and that's partially true, but immigrant integration happens at the local level. How communities attract and welcome newcomers helps lay the foundation for whether a person stays, works, starts a small business, or raises a family. In Cleveland alone, there are over 125,000 immigrants. They pay over $1.3 billion in taxes and help fill workforce needs in healthcare, manufacturing, and other critical industries. They're also over 60% more likely than the US born population to start a small business in Cleveland. They not only help fill workforce needs, they create jobs for other Americans. And that is something that can't be captured at the national level. Those impacts are happening on the ground every day in Cleveland's communities. Our local elected officials have a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives. And when policies are established that let everyone live up to their potential, everybody benefits. So thank you again for participating in this critical conversation, and remember to vote.
Thank you, Mo. And normally at this point, what I would do is go through the guidelines for our candidates who are participating in today's forum. But Blaine Griffin is running unopposed in Ward 6, so I'll dispense with those guidelines and just to suggest to Blaine that you try to keep your answers to about 2 minutes as you work with the moderator in terms of the dialogue. And I'd like to ask everybody who may be participating by asking questions to please remember to be civil in this discourse. And I think it's very important that we respect and understand that. Blaine Griffin is a councilman originally from Youngstown who moved to Cleveland in 1993. He and his wife of 20 years, Jeanette, and their 3 sons reside in the Larchmere neighborhood of Ward 6. And experienced public service, Councilman Griffin has served on council since 2017. And I'd also like to introduce today's moderator, Bruce Lowe. Bruce is a partner with the Taft, I'm going to mispronounce this, Stettinius and Hollister LLP in Cleveland, here in their Cleveland office, where he his practice focuses on general business and commercial litigation, business bankruptcy and restructuring, and international business matters. He is president of the Greater Cleveland International Lawyers Group and is currently chair of the British American Business Council and chair emeritus of the British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio. Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you to ask Blaine some questions.
Well, thank you, Joe. And with that, we'd like to move into the discussion questions with Blaine. And Blaine, welcome. Thank you for attending. I note with interest your ward, I think, encompasses Larchmere Imports, where I have been taking my cars for the last and having them maintained and serviced for the last 45 years, I think. So certainly 40 years. And so I know the area pretty well. All right, I'm going to start with the first of these pre-supplied questions. And obviously, a lot of them are focused on the impact of international parts of the globe, persons around the globe coming into this area and being assimilated in the greater Cleveland area and Northeast Ohio. So what I'm going to ask you first is, what is your experience serving and interacting with the international community in your own community and in Northeast Ohio at large? And how has this shaped your understanding of your community and your role as a leader?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Bruce, for hosting this. I also like to thank all of the board and staff of Global Cleveland. My experience with servicing and interacting with the international community is probably more in depth than most of the candidates that you've dealt with. I was the executive director of the Community Relations Board for 11 years in the Jackson administration. And in that role, it was my job to cultivate relationships with ethnic and diverse groups throughout the city. So I really worked close with the 117 groups across the city of Cleveland when I was in that role, and doing everything from hosting festivals and hosting events in City Hall, welcoming our groups that came in from the international communities, as well as really helping with problem solving and dealing with some of the complex issues that arose with the ethnic groups, specifically like the Somali and the Somali Bantu and other groups that have enclaves throughout the city of Cleveland. I currently serve an area that has a large contingent of Case Western Reserve students. So my area probably has one of the largest groups of international students that live in the city of Cleveland and are educated in the city of Cleveland, between Case Western Reserve and also Cleveland Institute of Art, as well as the institutions like Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals and all of the teaching schools that they have. It's really shaped my understanding of helping to understand how the international community can help Cleveland grow our population, and why it's important to really try to find ways to help them grow and live in the city of Cleveland.
Very good. Next question. Our population loss from 2010 to 2018 would have been even worse if not for the 37,000 immigrants who moved into Cuyahoga County during that time. These new residents have offset the population loss by 45%. How can we attract more immigrants to move here to continue this important trend?
And I forget the acronym, but I know when I worked for the mayor's office, there was a group called NOCHE, and it was Northeast Ohio College and Health Education Group. And we really found ways to try to find career paths for a lot of the immigrant and refugee community that came into the city of Cleveland, to really try to help find pathways for them to stay here. You know, one of the things that I believe that we have to do is really keep more traded sector jobs here in the city of Cleveland, so that when a lot of the patents that a lot of these ingenious, immigrant and refugee populations build and innovate and invent things, that we need to find ways to produce them at a larger scale, so that we can really try to help them stay here and not take their bright ideas and a lot of their bright, talented things back to their country. So I would love to find ways to work with Northeast Ohio, the team NEO, as I have in the past, to really try to attract more immigrant population here. And I believe that we really have a great opportunity of doing it through our education system. Industry 4.0 is something that we know is here. And I think if we really take advantage of Industry 4.0, the new industrial revolution, that we can actually find ways to attract a lot of these immigrants to bring their talents and bring their businesses up to scale here. I also think that we should look at some areas that, quite frankly, have been abandoned in the city of Cleveland, and really look at how we can provide housing options and housing opportunities for a lot of the immigrant population and refugee population, just like all the rest of us that have, when African Americans migrated from the South, when a lot of the Irish community came from County Mayo, it's the same thing for the immigrant refugee community, is to really make sure that once we have a small group of immigrant refugees, that we also embrace their families and try to recruit more of them to come into our community.
Thank you very much. That's a good answer. As an immigrant myself, I empathize with and support a lot of the things you're saying, Councilman.
Thank you, sir.
Next question. There are over 1,000 immigrant entrepreneurs in Cleveland. They are 38% more likely to be entrepreneurs than US-born residents. What portion of the Economic Development Office in the city of Cleveland would be devoted to supporting immigrant entrepreneurs under your leadership?
I would have a dedicated staff person, and I would be willing to legislate and support an administration that puts a legislative person there in the Economic Development Department to work closely with some of our groups like the Greater Cleveland Partnership Team, NEO, our universities, and everyone else, in order to really try to coordinate and really try to have a specific emphasis on how we can support some of the immigrant refugee businesses in our areas. I would also look at zones where we can actually designate certain areas, for example, of Ward 6, where if I can really focus on the Buckeye area and really try to promote the immigrant population to really come and work with some of the businesses that we've invested $1.2 million in white boxing, and have a person in the Economic Development Department that knows where those areas are and really can work with the immigrant and refugee population to take advantage of plugging in their businesses into those areas that we have made significant investments along West 25th Street corridor, because it's not just about Ward 6. I'm a council person that looks at what we can do legislatively in order to help the entire city of Cleveland. I would also tell you that I would work very close with our universities in order to really understand what are the emerging technologies, our manufacturing industries, in order to really try to understand where the latest technology and where the growth opportunities and the demand-driven jobs are, in order to try to make sure that our Economic Development Department really doubles down the investments in those areas, so that we're attracting, making this a place that's attractive to do business. We're competing globally now. We're not just competing regionally. We're not just competing in Ohio. We're not just competing with the nation. So we want to make sure that we have areas of Cleveland that are very good as far as opportunity. Opportunity corridor is one of those areas that part of it is in Ward 6, that I would work closely with the Economic Development Department to recruit businesses to come into those corridors.
I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense, utilizing the universities there. All three major universities down in the downtown or close to downtown area are very close to your ward, so within reach. There's a lot of opportunity there for collaboration.
Exactly.
Next question, number 4. How would you support adding new members and staff to the Community Relations Board that represent the changing immigrant population in Cleveland, such as an African immigrant community liaison and an Arab immigrant community liaison? Now, you touched on that before, so this kind of gets you to the next level, I suppose.
Well, I think that one of the things that I would look at doing is reconstituting how the community relations board is structured. Right now, there's supposed to be 4 people from industry, 4 people from labor, 4 people from the clergy community, and then 4 people or so from the international communities, 1 Asian American, 1 Arab American, and others. So I would first look and see what legislation we might need to put in place to reconstitute the community relations board. So when members matriculate off of the community relations board, we can make it where it's more reflective of the international and ethnic and diverse nature of the city of Cleveland. I think that it's an antiquated makeup of how the board is structured right now, and we will probably need to look at that again. As far as staffing, I would definitely support staff that works with the Arab immigrant community. We have a lot of Arab immigrant businesses, as well as we have a lot of Arab immigrant, enclaves. I believe Cleveland, Buffalo, and Detroit have the largest constitution of the Arab American community. And one of the things that I would really try to work closely with is to really try to, make sure that we have a liaison that is working closely with them. I apologize, everybody. I got these calls coming in. I apologize. I would first and foremost work closely with these guys to try to make sure that we have somebody working closely with them. And then I would also work places like Access and Cameo and others in order to make sure that we are working with those kind of institutions to focus on this as well. But just like I mentioned earlier about the Somali and the Somali Bantu, I really learned a very good lesson that I really, at the time, and a lot of other of my staff and teammates thought that the Somali community was always one big community. And we didn't have the historical knowledge and precedence to recognize that most of the taxi cab drivers and most of those folks came from a wealthy class of Somalis that didn't always see eye to eye with some of the Somali Bantu communities. So I think it's important for somebody to really understand the nuances, of these immigrant and ethnic enclaves in the area. And really, I would make sure that we work with the Community Relations Board to have that staff.
That's a very good point, Blaine. Sometimes the subtleties of tribal differences that go back historically very deeply are not, easily made, known or sensitive to the people that have to deal with these questions of influxes of immigrants. So being sensitive to that, I think, is a great piece of wisdom, and I would hope to see that. The next question is number 5. On average, 500 to 700 refugees are resettled to Cleveland every year from countries such as Nepal, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Somalia. The Biden-Harris administration announced that they will increase refugee admissions to 125,000 a year nationally, up from 15,000 this year. This means Cleveland's 3 refugee resettlement agencies will receive 3 to 4 times as many families as they did this past year. How do you plan to open Cleveland for these new residents and provide refugees with the opportunity to contribute to Cleveland? Of course, this is a little bit of a softball because it follows on logically from your last answer and the discussion you had.
Right, and I think that these are things that we often lose sight of, the blocking and tackling that we have to do in order to make Cleveland more welcoming to the immigrant and refugee community. For example, one of the things that I would immediately do, and what I would legislate and work closely with my colleagues in order to do, is a Welcome to Cleveland type of package that we work closely with Global Cleveland as well as other institutions that serve this population. And what I would do is really help convene social service agencies to really make sure that they get acclimated with the support networks that they need in order to make sure that they have the support in place that they need. I would also make sure that we work closely with our education system. I believe that TJ, Thomas Jefferson, has a very good program in order to work close with the children. I think that's important because a lot of times the children learn the language, they get educated, they learn all of the tools of the trade for, to be good citizens of the United States. But oftentimes the parents don't have the same opportunity. So I would really work to have a lot of educational classes for the parents so that they can become acclimated, so that it's not an uneven learning trajectory between the parents and the students, and have that disconnect, which oftentimes leads to family disruption and other things. I would welcome Biden-Harris administration to increase refugees to come into our cities. I also think that we need to do small things like helping them understand city services. As a council person, it's nothing more than making sure then, people know when the garbage needs to be picked up, to make sure that there's limited, make sure that we have, address language barriers when they call the police department, so that they can know how to call police or how to call our safety forces when they have issues. So I will work with those three areas: social service, education, and city services, to make sure that we have a well-rounded way to welcome all of these communities into Cleveland.
Very good, very good. We're going to move on quickly to other questions, more of a more general, global related nature with respect to the locale here. Annually, hundreds of international students graduate from Case Western, Tri-C, and CSU with in-demand skills who are not being retained in the area to contribute to population and economic growth. Can you share what policies you will support to address this?
Well, a lot of things will have to be handled through the visa process and other things, which is a lot to deal with federal and other regulations that will be, that will handle that. I will work closely with the universities, as I mentioned earlier, in order to try to figure out how we could bring more of those traded sector jobs here. For example, one of the things that you don't have on here is CIA. I'm a big fan of Cleveland Institute of Art. They were very good at recruiting the head of Disney in, I believe, Hong Kong or China, that they recruited to come here and deal with their animation department, which has taken their animation department to a whole nother level. I believe they're second ranked in the entire world as far as having education around animation. And as you know, that is a growing industry. So I would look at how we can identify those growing industries and work with the institutions that you mentioned in order to really try to do talent acquisition, to really try to bring some of that top level talent here, which we believe will also attract students and that will contribute to our population. So I've already begun working on those. I will also want to commend Global Cleveland because I think that there also has been some steps made to do this, as well as the previous question, because I believe in 2018, Cleveland was ranked about 64th in how we welcomed immigrants, and I believe we moved up to 14 now. So just some of the small things that we've done to work close with the universities and to do some of the things to be a more welcoming city, as well as expand our sister city imprint, which I think can help with this as well as some of the things that I didn't mention in my first answer, that I am also a German Marshall Memorial Fellow, and I've also been a part of Adler missions to Israel. So I've also recently really have done a worker exchange in Germany to really look at Industry 4.0. So I would utilize some of those things that I have learned through that process and through those engagements in order to try to do things like help with limited English proficiency, and have things that we can work with those communities at the library and other places in order to be welcoming and help with those population and economic growth.
Very good. I'm glad you mentioned CIA because my wife is a graduate of there. We're going to shift quickly to, because time is moving on, to Q&A to see if we've got any questions. I don't see any because obviously you've answered the questions very comprehensively and I think covered the bases. So I'm going to move on and ask you one more question before we have a wrap up. Cleveland has sister cities all around the world, such as Ibadan, Nigeria, Lima, Peru, Gdansk, Poland, and Bangalore, India. What is your game plan for making Cleveland a more open and international facing city to strengthen and grow these relationships?
Well, first of all, we have to get them here. So I think that our airport and having flights that are connected with some of these sister cities is important. I think that Cleveland has a heck of a story to tell. When you talk about, we have the largest Romanian population, we have a large Hungarian population, we have the largest Hungarian Catholic Church in the Eastern Hemisphere. I'm sorry, in the Western Hemisphere. So I would build upon some of the connectivity that we have with some of the ethnic enclaves. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that I represent Little Italy, which is one of the last large ethnic enclaves in the city of Cleveland. Even though we have a large student population there, we still have a heavy presence of immigrant refugees from the Italian American community. So I would build on those areas. And then I would also tell Cleveland's story, especially in the area that I serve, about how former immigrant populations were able to come and thrive and grow and become acclimated to the city of Cleveland fabric. For example, a lot of people don't know that at one time, the Woodland Hills, Buckeye area had a large Japanese American presence. And I would love to try to recapture some of those things. So I would really work closely to make Cleveland more international, make sure that we have more wayfinding, make sure that we highlight some of the ethnic and immigrant enclaves and treasures that we have, like I mentioned about the Hungarian church. Make sure that we talk about how a lot of people don't know that we have the largest Romanian enclave here in Cleveland. We have a large German footprint here in Cleveland. So these are things that I would really work closely with the sister city, but it all begins with flights and making sure that we have a way to connect them to Cleveland, and then also making sure we work closely with the universities to be a more international facing city. I also think that we have an opportunity to work closely with our partners to the north in Canada, really focus on maritime industry and really try to focus on how the St. Lawrence Seaway and others can really help with shipping and really tap into how we can work with some of these international populations as well. So travel, transportation, different multimodal transportation, as well as retention and attraction through working with our universities and our schools.
Very good. Well, thank you, Councilman Griffin. I'll give one chance to anyone who wants to post a question for the councilman. And if not, within the next few seconds, we'll move over to a closing statement that I will make. And first of all, thank you once again, everyone, for attending the Ward 6 Forum. We would like to thank the candidate, Blaine Griffin, for coming in and in good faith to speak to the international community tonight as eloquently as he has. As a reminder, we invited every candidate running for election in this ward, and everyone was given an opportunity to reply. You can find the answers to these questions from every candidate who completed the questionnaire on our website. We would especially like to thank you, the audience, for coming. It's your vote that determines the next generation of Cleveland City leadership. Thank you to the interpreters as well for providing language access. We would also like to thank our incredible sponsors and partners who made these forums possible. They are Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Bedondo Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, the Council on International Programs USA, the Cleveland Cultural Gardens, the Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., US Together, USCRI Cleveland, and the Young Latino Network. All of these organizations perform wonderful work with and for our international community. Please find them on social media and on the web to learn more about the work they do. Have a good evening, everyone, and remember, we strengthen our city by welcoming the world.